Hey everyone, Jack here, TalkNorwichCity. Welcome back to the channel. It has been a very busy few days at the football club, an unexpected busy few days. And the dust is still settling on the news that Johannes, alongside his assistant Glenn Riddlesholme, have been sacked by Norwich City. This was penned as a long-term project under the guise of Ben Napper and Norfolk Holdings Group and Zoe Webber. This was the man that they selected. This was the man that they identified over a thorough and very long process to spearhead this football club, hopefully back to the Premier League. I thought that we were strapped in for the long run with Johannes, and even after the form that we've seen over the past few months, I still thought that he would be given the summer and a chunk of next season to try and make this work. I thought he would be given another transfer window in order to bring in some players that he deemed his own and that he was excited to work with, and also have the ability to shift some players that he didn't want to work with. Ultimately, that is not the case. We were in relegation form for a quarter of this season. Since March the 1st, Norwich City have been the worst championship side out of everyone, and there are some pretty bad sides in this division, and that was deemed not good enough by Ben Napper and Norfolk Holdings Group and Zoe Webber, and he was dismissed. And now attention will turn to the last two championship games of this season, away to Middlesbrough and at home to Cardiff, against two sides who are both needing wins desperately for their own reasons. Middlesbrough looking for top six, Cardiff looking to stay in the division. They are both going to be incredibly difficult. I think our chances of winning those are bettered by Jack Wilshere being in charge and the natural boost that will give the players who are fighting for contracts, who are looking for moves, who are looking to solidify their place in the side next season. Jack Wilshere obviously takes charge for both of these games. There won't be a replacement brought in before the end of the season. I don't think this will be a rushed decision. I think Jack Wilshere will be given the opportunity to prove himself. He has said very publicly that he wants to be a head coach, that is very much his aim. He is a driven young man who, of course, retired from his playing career very early because of his various injury issues. And he will be looking to stake a claim to be the next head coach of this football club. And, you know, he is in the top three in terms of the kind of bookies' favourites. I would take all of those prices with a pinch of salt. They are such small markets that the prices can be changed with the smallest of sums. Russell Martin heads the market, and then it's Jack Wilshere, Steve Cooper on there, Gary O'Neill, Liam Rosenior, Will Still. It's always the kind of obvious names that make these lists, and quite often it's names that aren't on the list that become the head coaches of Norwich City. I don't think David Wagner was on that shortlist. I don't think Johannes certainly wasn't on that shortlist when the respective previous head coaches were sacked. So, you know, take all of those names with a slight pinch of salt. I think Jack Wilshere will certainly have an opportunity. He wouldn't be my number one. I think after what we've seen with Johannes, I'm looking for someone with a bit more championship experience, a bit more managerial experience. I don't think it necessarily has to come in the championship, but Johannes Hoftorp had been managing for 2 years. I think that's difficult to come in and really make an impact when you're so fresh in the game. Look, there's managers that have done it, and I believe in giving people an opportunity, and I don't think the hiring of Johannes was necessarily a bad decision. It didn't work out. I think some things were out of his control. Some things he will do again. He will have learnt lots from that. I think the likes of Liam Rosenior and Will Still, have experience, have done very well in there, albeit fairly short careers so far. I like Rosenior. I think he was unlucky to be sacked from Hull, but carving out a nice career at Strasbourg. I don't think he'd jump at the opportunity to be at Norwich City. I may be wrong. I think the same about Will Still, although the potential of managing in England might be high on his agenda. Gary O'Neill, again, doesn't jump out at me as being an obvious replacement. Obviously links with Norwich City as managing the Premier League and for a part of that was doing very well. I don't think I love the way in which he plays football. Steve Cooper, again, a pretty solid CV and does have that experience both in the Championship and in the Premier League. I don't think that one jumps out. So, other than Jack Wilshere, the name on that list, and I think the obvious one on that list, is Russell Martin. Now, I would class him as a Norwich City legend, lifted a playoff trophy at Wembley for Norwich, was here for a decade in the Championship, in the Premier League, did incredibly well, was a leader, has gone on to manage MK Dons and Swansea and Southampton, and at each of those clubs has done well and has his issues as well. You know, I think on the most part has done pretty well at every EFL club he's been at. Certainly has a style, certainly has a way of playing, has been to huge benefit and also has been critiqued at times. He was eaten up alive in the Premier League with Southampton, as I think the people that were brought in after him have been as well, and ultimately like Kieran McKenna has at Ipswich Town, and like what's happened at Leicester. So that's I would take that Premier League record with a pinch of salt. Ultimately, Russell Martin plays a very similar style to what Johannes was trying to do. They can't sway away from that playing style too much because they've already invested time and a lot of money into recruiting players for that style. I'm looking at Ante Cianats, Matej Jurasek, Oscar Schwartau, Forsen Amankwa, Jose Cordoba, Jacob Wright. You know, that's a significant outlay on those players, and all of them have been brought in for a certain playing style. And I think it would be wrong to go away from that. I think the whole point of having a sporting director is that there is a consistency and a solidity around what you're trying to do. And ultimately, that is the overarching kind of decision maker, and the head coach and the players can come and go, but nothing too much will sway away from what they're trying to do in terms of that. So, look, the romantic in me would love Russell Martin to come back and smash it at Norwich City. I don't think it's as simple as just phoning Russ up and him throwing himself at the opportunity. He's said on podcasts and in the media that he's already turned down quite a lot of jobs, both in this country and out of this country. I suspect there will be opportunities in the Premier League. And, you know, the potential for him to come into a Norwich side that are very much on the decline, albeit with a pretty talented squad at this level and with money and with different people involved now than what he would have been involved with when he left the club under somewhat of a cloud. I think people forget that. Like he certainly didn't see eye to eye with Daniel Farker. He didn't see eye to eye with Stuart Webber. He was booed off the pitch. I remember at the Den at Millwall in that kind of final season for him. So it's not all rosy with the kind of recent history of Russell Martin at Norwich City, but I think most fans welcome him back. Ultimately, you know, this is a huge call for Ben Napper to make. The first of his managerial hires that he has made has failed. Ultimately, he's had to sack Johannes, and having gone through that process of recruiting and trying to find their man, to end in this way is a huge disappointment. And this next one is massive. You can get one wrong and still be regarded as a good sporting director. To get two wrong, you're then suddenly looking at quite a difficult prospect. And I don't think Norwich fans, I'm certainly not willing to sit through another transition season in the way that this one has gone. Norwich have, both on paper and probably on the eye as well, regressed in terms of performance levels. And that certainly wasn't what the promise was from the hierarchy. So this next managerial decision needs to be bang on. Jack Wilshere, look, I think if they weren't to offer him the head coach role, then he's probably going, maybe my future lies away from Norwich City. There is history between Jack Wilshere and Ben Napper from their Arsenal days. Part of the reason why Jack Wilshere is here is because of Ben Napper and their relationship. So that's going to be interesting to monitor. The next couple of games, the next couple of weeks of training sessions, there is an opportunity for Jack Wilshere to really stamp his mark on it. I'm looking for someone with a bit more of experience. We've been down the young, inexperienced route with Johannes, and that ultimately didn't work. Look, I'm not saying that Jack Wilshere and Johannes are the same person, and Jack Wilshere has a good CV, is clearly a very capable man, is a good communicator, had a great playing career, has learnt from some of the best at Arsenal, and will have learnt a lot over this past few months under Johannes's kind of watchful eye. So that's going to be fascinating. The last couple of games will be interesting to monitor what Jack's saying and how that translates onto the pitch. Ultimately, I think and I hope that the next head coach comes externally, but there are options. And that shortlist of Russ and Steve Cooper, Gary O'Neill, Imrasinia, Will Still is quite an exciting list. And I suspect there are plenty of names on Ben Napper's list that will have been created because I think the hope was that, well, not the hope, but their reality at the start of this season is that they needed a shortlist because they thought that Johannes might be poached. Ultimately, he's not here, but it's not because he's been poached by another club. It's because he's been sacked. So I would love Russ to come back and manage Norwich City and see success. Who knows what happens? It's going to be a fascinating few weeks and months, regardless of what happens. Let me know who you would love to see as the next Norwich City manager. I know the likes of Knutson and gaffers like that will also be on the tips of tongues. So it's going to be an incredible couple of weeks to see how this all unfolds. Russ would be the man for me. I know it's the boring answer. I know it's the obvious answer. But wouldn't it be good to see him back in the dugout at Carrow Road? Let me know who you want down in the comment section below. Stay locked in to Talk Norwich City over the coming weeks. There will be loads and loads of content on every pulse of what's going on at the Canaries. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.